Part of the Daily SupChina newsletter. Subscribe for free twice a year. Thousands of Chinese export companies and potential customers gather in Guangzhou for the China Import and Export Fair, also known as the Canton Fair. When Reuters polled Chinese export companies at the last Canton Fair this spring, only a quarter of them expected a full-blown trade war with the U.S. About $250 billion worth of traded goods under tariffs later, the three-week Canton Fair going on right now is decidedly more pessimistic. Reuters' poll of export companies this time showed that more than 60% expected the trade war to last at least another year. Bloomberg also has reporters on the ground in Guangzhou and is updating this post with insights from specific companies. Canton Fair: how China's exporters are handling trade war. Porous paywall. Of note, Christmas 2019 could be tricky, because holiday decorations are the type of low-margin, labor-intensive consumer goods for which the companies that manufacture them would suffer if the U.S. subjected them all to tariffs. And though one Christmas-oriented company said it had not been hit by tariffs yet, they said it would be impossible to quickly relocate more production to Vietnam to avoid further tariffs that have been threatened. Also at the top of that Bloomberg article is a video interview with economist Andy Rothman, whose comments are worth noting. A significant mistake being made in Washington is that American officials are both underestimating the Chinese economy and overestimating the importance of exports to the Chinese economy. Some notes on that: President Trump and some of his advisors have repeatedly conflated the Chinese stock market with the broader Chinese economy, even though they are very separate things. The Chinese stock market has been battered by the trade war. The Chinese economy has not been much. Rothman has written before about how the Chinese economy is no longer export-driven. Net exports, the value of a country's exports minus the value of its imports, account for only 2% of China's GDP, down from a peak of 9% in 2007. Rothman predicts we'll see a resolution to the dispute within the next few quarters, partly because the impact on the U.S. economy will become substantial. The president's in deal-making mode, with trade tensions having recently been reduced with Canada, Mexico, the EU, and South Korea. It's not clear that Trump wants decoupling of the U.S. and Chinese economies, even though that is the apparent goal of many of Trump's advisors. Trump may be satisfied if he ends up getting a deal for just more market access and better protection for IPR, Rothman says. More U.S.-China and trade war news, geopolitics and security angle. The U.S. obviously doesn't want to contain China, Mattis says. Bloomberg: porous paywall. In what Bloomberg calls an attempt to soften the White House's messaging, Secretary of Defense James Mattis specifically denied that the U.S. was out to contain China. So we're two large powers, or two Pacific powers, two economic powers. There's going to be times we step on each other's toes, so we're going to have to find a way to productively manage our relationship, he said. But Mattis may not be the person managing that relationship going forward. To CBS over the weekend, Trump indicated that Mattis may leave the White House, and that he is sort of a Democrat, in Trump's view. And other national security officials in the Trump administration do not seem to share Mattis' view, as we noted on Access yesterday. Paywall: John Bolton, the national security advisor, seems to be all in on a strategy of containing Chinese power. Beijing warned to prepare for more U.S. provocations in South China Sea. SCMP: alarmed by China's predatory practices. James Mattis, Economic Times of India. American politics: Trump urged to declare China a currency manipulator. Economic Times of India. Tammy Baldwin, a Democratic senator from Wisconsin, is not happy that Trump hasn't labeled China a currency manipulator as he had promised. She wrote a letter to the Trump administration urging it to do so in its upcoming currency report, but Politico has reported that there are no plans to name and shame China in that report. Also, economists generally don't agree with Baldwin. China is not significantly artificially depreciating its currency these days, even to offset the trade war impact.